Matt.
Thank you, everyone. Please get seated. Thank you. All right. Say hello to everyone online. We had over 150 people sign up, online and in person. Y'all just now get some good food, but it's good to see everybody. Thank you. Thanks again for everybody for coming. I'm Matt Strauss. I am the founder and CEO of RiseGate. That's our little flyer and brochure over there. Grateful to be here. Thank you for the host for hosting us as well. You'll be able to meet everybody in a few seconds as well. I'm the moderator for today. The goal of this panel, just to make sure you're all in the right room, is to start, implement, and grow and scale your DEI initiatives. The event is hosted by a few of us. RiseGate's technology helps companies and corporations source untapped and diverse talent from community organizations. Hand over to Andres from 25 Minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Again, my name is Andres Escobar. I am the community manager at our location here in Roland Meadows, 25 North Co-working. We're a co-working space where we actually lease event space, private offices, desks, and meeting rooms. So if you ever have a need for that, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to host you. Thanks, man.
We also office at 25 Minutes. That's right. Also the Schaumburg Business Association, YOPRO, the young professionals of the SBA. It's an ambitious group of diverse and young professionals connected by the SBA with the purpose of creating networking relationships, enhancing professional skills, engaging civically, and providing career resources for future leaders. All events fall under our 3 pillars: service, social, and development. In the last 2 years, SBA YOPRO professionals have really focused on DEI. They have really engaged the SBA, the Schaumburg business community, to promote DEI across the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And recently, we have now partnered up with the Schaumburg Business Association YOPRO RiseGate. If you're interested in the SBA YOPRO, Danilo over in the corner, or if you're online, send us a message. We'll also send a follow-up email. We can always connect you to the SBA team, as the Schaumburg Business Association is the second largest association in the state, I think.
Yes. Schaumburg Business Association. Yeah. Brandon. Yes.
They're huge. So I had no idea. Actually, I had an idea. And now we can start the event. So just to make sure again, you're all here for the right reason. The goal is for you to learn, the audience, how to start, implement, and scale your DEI initiatives. So here are the expectations for today. I've never been a teacher, but my wife in the audience is. So today, my goal is to make sure that you're learning. I won't be talking too much. The experts will be talking. So my goal is that you listen and hear ideas, examples, real-life experiences of how DEI works on all 3 of those categories. 3 of those ideas. The categories that we'll talk about in DEI are talent acquisition, which Shelby will discuss. Then we have retention and culture, which Anjali will discuss next. And last but not least is Anjali will talk about upward mobility. Those are the 3 focus categories of DEI. So my goal as your teacher moderator, again, is just to let the experts do the talk. So without further ado, let's start with introductions. And also thank you. Shelby, Anjali, and Anjali, can you start off with some introductions where you can just have 30 seconds to say your name, your title, and one milestone you're most proud of as it relates to your work in diversity, equity, and inclusion? Shelby first.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. I'm Shelby Parchman, and I'm the managing partner of Urban Strategies, and that's a consulting firm who works with nonprofit organizations, high net worth individuals, and foundations to create opportunities for folks in the south and west sides of Chicago. And one of our proudest moments is this new program that we'll probably talk about a little bit today, Matt, is Jump Hire, where we have created a pathway to employment for those on the south and west sides who don't have college degrees.
Hi, my name is Anjali Walker, and I'm with BCU. We are a credit union here in Northern Illinois. That's where we're stationed, but we are across the U.S. and Puerto Rico. Shout out to BCU. I am our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And one of the wins I'm proud to say we have a lot of great stories, but one of the wins that I think for us was starting employee resource groups. And it transformed the voices in the conversations and the way that we worked together by creating communities within an organization that supported and elevated our culture and removed barriers and challenges. And if we know what's happened in the last several years, in particular race relations and health challenges, and now the economy, those conversations are important now, even as we think about how we're growing and adapting and thriving in today's environment. So that's one of our really amazing accomplishments.
Good afternoon. I'm Andalib Kilgadi. I'm currently the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources in Evanston-Skokie School District 65. And exciting news, as of last night, I will be the incoming superintendent of Illinois Oswego District 308. So really excited to have this opportunity to take a lot of what I've learned in Evanston to Oswego. To your question, I think my proudest moment came a few weeks ago. I work in a school district. We have about 7,000 students. And we've been on a mission for the last 3 years to develop a teacher workforce that represents our students. We have a significant number of students who are African American or Hispanic, and so we developed a teacher residency program. And I've had the honor of championing this program. And this teacher residency program allows individuals who have not had the opportunity to receive their teaching license to become teachers. And as a result of it, we've been on this mission to make sure they have an opportunity to become the best teachers that our students deserve. And recently, we had our first cohort of educators, and looking at their test scores, we saw significant improvement in their outcomes on the student performance. And I have to tell you, after 2 years of grinding, that felt really good to see those kinds of results for our students.
And that's why we're all here today. And you can feel how important this work is, how much it means to change people's lives left and right. So before I even dive into the questions, at Rise Kid, what we do is we just want to have fun, but also we want to make sure we feel the passion in this work and how much we're helping the community, how much we're helping others. So without further ado, I'm going to have one little experience for you all of how we really enjoy at Rise Kid. Corey, please come up. Then we'll get right into the event. This is how we go about our spoken word.
Clap once if you hear me. Again, clap once if you hear me. For those who just entered this level of education, gather around and receive this form of matriculation. I'm ecstatic to see the happiness on your faces, calm but complacent while receiving rapturous admiration. For those who've been here before, welcome back to the lesson. I demand that you pay attention, class is in session. When respect is in question, imagine my elation while replacing weapons with words throughout this delegation. You see, it's not my intent to baffle or befuddle. I keep your kids right in the clear path about this struggle. This journey's just beginning. It's highly informative, a transformative, revolutionary metamorphosis. Now my vernacular's ringing loud through your caucuses, like a pack of parents protesting a principal's offices. Close your mouth, no doubt, in the midst of witness and awesomeness. Fixing rhymes for breakfast like grits and biscuits and sausages. So eat up. I just want to turn up your heater. My heat up, you can tell it from my demeanor. The cockiness in my stance, the mic I grip in my hands. I don't give them a chance. My delivery's like a lance when I strike. I'm like Mike, how I'm nice on the mic. Spit it just once, feels like I beheaded you twice. Yikes. No comparison when my mic's on. I run the shine like I got a fresh pair of Nikes on. Thank you.
So Corey was the one who inspired me to keep going through Rise Kid, through all my tough times. He made a song for me early on that my wife has heard hundreds of times. And again, we have Corey and so many people that we impact along the way. And Corey's inspired me as much as I've inspired him on both sides. And that's why we're all here today. Diversity, equity, inclusion has its ups and downs for all the people that have been in this space. And we're going to share all of it. So let's start with the warm-up question. Shelby, can you explain how you help companies and corporations increase their diversity?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, the Jump Hire program. And this time last year, it wasn't a program. And we had a healthcare entrepreneur come to us and say, hey, I really want to increase diversity on the South and West Side of Chicago in terms of local employment. So we are working with hospitals and institutions on the South and West Sides of Chicago, and we created this program, Jump Hire, and we work directly with the HR department and departments who are hiring that have in-demand jobs. And so what we're doing is we're doing both hard skills and soft skills training to get folks ready for positions that are career positions and a living wage that has benefits. And so putting together that program in conjunction with, and our first hospital partner was Rush University in supply chain, which there's a lot of opportunities for diversity there. And so Rush did the hard skills training, we did the soft skills training, but we also supported all those individuals with removing every barrier that they would have to success. So we give them stipends, we give them daycare if they need it, we give them transportation, we give them clothing allowances, and we also provide healthy food for them every day and enough to take home to their families. And so because we look at it, it's a holistic approach. And so if the household isn't and healthy, we feel that the individual can't be healthy. And so working with Rush, we were able to identify positions that are available. And we were able, in our first cohort, we were able to place 14 individuals with jobs ranging from $40,000 a year to $70,000 a year, and with 6 months of training and no college degree. And so we are continuing on with partner with other hospitals, institutions, and other companies to replicate this program. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't cost anything. And one of the big things that came out of it is we were talking to some employers that thought we were going to be a staffing agency, was wondering how much it's going to cost. And we were like, no, it's free, and they couldn't believe it. And we actually have people come to our office and I read about this and I can't believe that this program exists. And so it's good to be able to add value to HR departments and have the training available, have the support available. And one of the other things that we brought into it is we noticed that a lot of individuals were having mental health issues. And so we actually hired a mental health professional to do group and individualized coaching. So it's everything that we can do to support the individual through the process, because we know the individuals that we're working with are challenged, but there's a great talent pool on both the South and West Side of Chicago. And we just want to figure out what's the best way to tap into it.
Awesome. See, again, this is why we do the work, why we just love helping people. It's all DEI. Next, we have Anjali, retention and culture. How have you used DEI as a strategy to enhance your culture, which also leads to more retention?
So one of the things that I think about when I think about your question is making sure that we're understanding culture is about the environment, right? And everyone could work in the same literal building and still have a different experience of that same organization. And so it's not just about defining your culture for people, but what's the experience that people have? And that could be different. It could be different on what level you're at in the organization, what floor literally you're on, where you sit, where your communication channels are. And so when you're thinking about how DEI can elevate those experiences, it's going to shed light on some of those dark corners. It's going to help you identify who doesn't have the same experience, who's not relishing and thriving in our organization. And so when we are looking at all of these spaces and giving people voices to be able to share their experience, including feedback channels for people to tell us what floor they're on and whether the temperature is too cold or too hot, right? Like then we can start to make those changes. And it starts with looking at everyone, not the majority. You've also got to tap into some of the minorities or underrepresented groups and some of your employee resource groups or business resource groups, if you have them, really create a sense of community for safe spaces. In those safe spaces, people can then feel empowered to say, this is my experience at this organization. I'm going to borrow this from a fellow diversity colleague, and her name is Glow, so shout out Glow if you're watching. Glow said, if you're in a company that doesn't value you, or if you don't have a sense of belonging, there are three things you're going to experience. You're going to see people get out, they're going to give up, or they're going to get even. And I'm not saying there's any passive aggressive people in this space, but you gotta watch out for that in your organization. And if you're not tapping into who's working and thriving here and then who's struggling and how do we remove barriers and challenges, that's what we're gonna see. We're gonna see the insides of your organization start to have, I call them holes in the bucket, right? And so we can't just worry about business. Business is made up of humans, people. And so that's why I say, and our organization is really strong on DEI is gonna help us be successful. It's not just about the individuals, it's also about how we service and do the work.
What was GLOW again?
GLOW, it was get out, give up, or get even. That's what people gonna do.
I got chills. Love it. Next up, we have Annalie. When I met Annalie, he was telling me about how he's a principal in his recent job, one of his last jobs. And he was acting like he was really in HR and recruiting. And I found that to be fascinating. So Annalie, can you tell us about upward mobility? Can you explain how your district created career pathways for upward mobility for aspiring leaders, which teachers then became principals?
Yeah, so that's, we call it Prep 65, and we actually received a grant from the state of Illinois to provide an opportunity for us to essentially provide these educators in our district an opportunity to get their Type 75. These are teachers who did not have it. They typically have their master's already in teaching. And we developed a program where we are partnering with Chicago State University to provide these teachers essentially their coursework and then their mentorship in the district. We also, this is our second year of this program, we have a complementary program called Aspiring Leaders. And our Aspiring Leaders program took individuals who already had their Type 75, which is a licensing you need in the state of Illinois to assume the role of a principal, a school administrator. But yet, a lot of times you may get your 75, but you're feeling like you're missing essentially the I don't want to say courage, but the additional skills that I think it really requires to go to that next level. And having been a principal in the district, and then the assistant superintendent of schools in the district, when it came to hiring, we often did not have anybody from our internal organization, especially individuals, people of color. And so while we had opportunities for principalships or our bench, we'll call it using the basketball metaphor, we didn't have much of a bench, right? And I have to tell you that this is our second year. We've now hired this will be actually this past week the Board of Education approved for three individuals who came out of our Prep 65 program to be hired, and assistant principal. Of those, two of them are individuals of color. And so this is just really a milestone. What we've learned is that you have to provide on-the-job training opportunities. And when we just expect that individuals are going to be ready, we ignore the fact that there's a hidden currency in any kind of leadership role. It's either informal leadership, that if you're lucky to get it, whether it's through family or through uncles, but if you're not part of a pipeline or there is no structure in your organization to confront the inequity that I think is inherent in our society, you limit individuals from those opportunities. You rob them of those opportunities, those privileges that I think come with really dominant societies where you have these structures. And so I would say that what the miracle, and we have an acronym that we use in our district, we call the Miracles Framework. And this Miracles Framework really kind of compounds or forces us to think about what are the actual programs you're using to realize diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do you actually have, as you mentioned, resource programs? Are you actually finding dollars so that when somebody wants to become a teacher, they have life, they can survive while they're going through their program? If you're not doing this kind of programmatic work, it doesn't matter how ambitious or motivated you are, excited you are, it's not going to happen.
And that's also just fascinating to me when you think about barriers to employment or upward mobility on every level of your career. And so the first part is start. And what's fascinating to me, and I said fascinating about 25 times today because I've met with so many corporations and companies that say they're working on a DEI plan. We're trying to figure out how to go about this. We're trying to start a diversity and inclusion plan. We need ideas. We're open to advice. Give me ideas. So we'll start off with that. how do you recommend discovering internal inequities that can become DEI solutions? And I'll hand over to Shelby to start.
That's a good question, Matt, because actually we are convening a group of folks who are looking to increase the diversity in hiring at a lot of companies in the Chicago area. And so one of the things that I have seen, and this is not just hiring, but we also work with Rush University on what they call supply chain localization. That's bringing in more diverse small suppliers from the west side of Chicago. And so what we oftentimes see is you can have the director from the C-suite saying, we want to increase diversity, and we want to do this, and we want to do that. And they're all excited about it. We'll get on a call and, they say like, now go out there and talk to our folks and get it done. And then we talk to the folks and it's like, well, where's the money coming from? Or like, this is not my initiative. And we see it both on the hiring side and on the supply side. And so what we are trying to do now is look at those organizations who are actually getting it and doing it right, bringing them to the table and saying, hey, let's put together a roadmap and for other HR representatives to do it. And so we're also looking at funding positions in organizations and in companies to say, hey, if you want to increase your level of diversity, let us hire a consultant to come into your company and help build that for you based on all the work that we've been doing with organizations all across the country in looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And so I think what happens is there's usually a disconnect from top to bottom. And sometimes you have the bottom want to go and the top doesn't, and vice versa. And a lot of times it's just that people don't know where to start. And so I would say it's more about looking at organizations that are already doing it well and learn from them. Get in a room and talk it through and see what works. And so what we see too is, a lot of folks I talk to, they say HR usually is the biggest bottleneck in a lot of the work that we do. And so because you can't get around some of the HR practices. And so just looking at HR practices and looking at it from a different lens and understanding that people from different backgrounds require a different approach. And that's why we're looking at it and saying, well, there's a lot of folks on the South and West sides that don't have college degrees, but they still can be a part of a workforce that there are a lot of jobs that are open that don't require college degrees. And so how do we connect that? And how do we work with the HR departments and also the specific departments in those organizations and help develop talent directly for them. And we've seen that's been a very successful model.
Awesome. Anjali?
When I think about just the piggyback off of what you were saying, so some of our talent acquisition teams aren't equipped for diversity recruiting. Some of our hiring teams aren't equipped to ask inclusive questions. Some of our hiring managers haven't evaluated their job descriptions to identify if all of those things are even required. Are they title-based asks or are they skill-based asks? Right? And I think that's kind of lending to what you're saying here is how do we kind of flex that? And so I would start with the education piece. Make sure your professionals, your people in those spaces are knowledgeable and are going to seek the know-how. How do I engage in diversity recruiting? How do I train and engage my hiring managers and my hiring teams to ask the questions? How can we look not for the diversity hire, but the value add to our organization and our teams, the perspective that isn't there, the voice that isn't being spoken. That builds innovation and helps organization adapt, right? Did you want me to speak on culture and engagement?
If you like.
Okay. I just pick it. I mean, I had energy on that. You were feeling it too, right?
Yes.
And so when I think about culture and engagement, some of the ways that we're looking at inequities are not far from that, but we also look at, many companies do engagement surveys. And typically you have, 15 questions, 20 questions in there that they send out to organizations, employees, and they say, hey, here's how I feel in the organization. I would encourage you to slice and dice that data without spending not an extra single dollar. You have data already if you're doing engagement surveys. So look at that same question. Do I feel my manager supports my development? Is a common question, right? So yes, an organization could see their score and feel really good about that. And be like, I pat myself on the back about that. But if you haven't looked to see, hey, are male and females feeling developed, or is it males are skewing that score? And so if you notice, hey, we have females feeling that they're not being developed, then I can have intentional initiatives to help develop our female employees. Same thing on all of the other dimensions if you have that data, right? If we're looking at race, are people experiencing our organization the same way? Your engagement surveys are going to tell you that. And then you could be intentional about how to start. Not by a textbook pathway, but what is really valuable to your organization. And so those are just some ways. And then I would say we last year added an inclusion index to our engagement survey. And so instead of slicing and dicing and making assumptions, we were asking very directly another 10 questions. How do you feel? Do you feel valued? Do you feel respected? Are you feeling like we're doing the good work in diversity? And so that then is still sliced the same way, because some people feel like it's hot in here, and some people might say, okay, it's feeling a little chilly. I'd like you to turn it up in our area. And that helps us have insight for how to start and where to begin.
Anything like, I believe. Anything to add? Good. All right, moving on to the next question. So this is where it gets pretty personal. So tears are welcome. Crying is welcome. It helps my class learn a lot, right? So I'm pretty emotional too, and I might cry. But what is the biggest challenge, or what was the biggest challenge or roadblock that you run into in diversity, equity, and inclusion? And if it relates to your manager or leadership, whatever kind of comes to mind is fair. Shelby, or I'm going to go first. Or Shelby, whoever would like to go first.
I have a good story. It actually relates to Baxter Healthcare Corporation. This was years ago, but I was recruited out of college to work for Baxter as a research assistant in their research facility around Lake, Illinois. And one of the things that I ran into was that you could tell that although they were trying to be more inclusive back then, I don't think they knew how. And so, so they hired 2 African-American chemists, and we had the toughest time and had a very hostile environment. And so what we ran into was that most people said, well, the only reason y'all got hired was because I was Black, not because you're a great scientist, it's because you're Black. And then having that hostile environment, him and I had a tendency to work together and, eat lunch together. And then HR would come and say, you gotta eat lunch with the white people, right? And literally, I mean, it's like, this is not right. And so I look at it and say, well, why don't you tell them to come eat lunch with us, right? But it was, and the HR profession was African American. And so when organizations, if you're gonna have a diversity, equity, inclusion program, it has to be, everybody has to be on board. Everybody has to have the sensitivity training. And you cannot have HR being the most insensitive department in your organization. I've since left Baxter and was a very successful scientist, and I just went over into working more in the nonprofit space and doing more community and economic development, which is an area that I met Matt years ago when he started. It was Solve at the time, right? But just being able to operate in that space and be able to make a change and understand like some of the challenges that especially an African-American male face in the society, it's heartwarming for me to be able to affect change in the city of Chicago.
If you like it.
Let's see. So I would say for us, a challenge that happened fairly early in our journey. Once we got the ball rolling, sometimes we're really excited. Like when you see people opening up, when you see people being more engaged and excited about what you're doing, sometimes that train can just take off. And you sometimes don't think about all of the crossing the T's and dotting the I's per se. And so I'll give you a real life example. I don't think I'll get in trouble for this one. But we were really excited for our alignment and support of Pride Month. And so shout out to Jim, you know. And our organization was really amped up about this. And internally, our culture was, let's go. Like, we haven't talked intentionally about this. We haven't done the things. And so we were like, oh, we were over the top, flying the flags and doing this and doing that. And talking about our values and what it meant to us to start this celebration in our organization. But not everybody is in the same building. For us, we have our central headquarters, but we also have branches in other communities and other spaces. And so for us, it was a matter of not everyone could celebrate because they weren't in a bubble. Your organization isn't just a bubble and you get to determine all of the things that are good and not good and what you're going to do. Sometimes people are put in position to deal with external factors, clients or members, or right? And so we also have to prepare our leaders for tough conversations. If we're going to put them in position to uphold and be champions for diversity, equity, inclusion, that means also preparing them for hard conversations, giving them the resources and the tools to deal with a challenging client or a member that pushes back on your internal values as an organization. And so while we were all gung-ho and being like, oh yeah, our culture, we got this, and we were, feeling really good about it, what we found is our employees were then faced with some backlash and some questions about it. And they didn't really have the language and understanding for how to verbalize that yet. And so while they wanted to support it, they were kind of put in this position to try to figure it out. And it took us scrambling. So then HR, you did try to throw HR under the bus a little bit.
I'll speak to that.
Yes, he did. And so our HR department hit the ground running with some open calls for our leaders to join, to talk about those conversations. It took us some very quick backtracking a little bit to make sure that people felt equipped with some real clear language that wasn't going to deter or detract our members and interfere in our business, but rather how could we hold our values and still be an inclusive financial provider and help people understand what we were doing and why. And so I would say, provide your people the tools and the resources to do what you're asking them to do. It's not just give directive, but really help align them with being successful.
I appreciate that because I think the hardest thing in this work is you don't want to feel like you're the barrier. And I will personalize this that I was excited about the teacher residency. I've shared this with you all. We have this pipeline. And recently I was in a school and 2 or 3 individuals came up to me and said, I really was excited to be in the program, but I didn't make the cut because there's a GPA level, right? There's a grade point average you have to have. And I was in school like 20 years ago. But I've been working as a paraprofessional, or I've been working and I don't have the grades. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, but that's just what the university demands of us, right? And a board member in our district said, well, why aren't we addressing that, right? So why are we just comfortable with addressing an inequity at this level, but we're not willing to say, but what are the additional supports we can put in place to go even deeper into support? It's like, well, that takes, and then again, come up the barriers. And so I think for me and listening to you both, I think we have to maintain in our work a reflective posture. And as an African-American, for me, it's, we can get stuck sometimes because, well, we're constantly confronting the outside barriers, but we have a role to also look within ourselves and our own internalized approaches that may replicate structures limiting others have access. And so I think that for me, in hearing you both, I thought about that that's the barrier. Like, how am I willing to push aside what may be easy successes and say, let's get deeper.
And I can totally relate to all these challenges. It's personal, external, internal, list goes on. It's really lonely at times when you're trying to do this work. And again, that's why I curate Reform for you all, because I found that was my guiding light, his music that he made for me. And I could just go back to the song and be like, nope, I'm better than this. You know, they said no to me because of X, Y, Z reason. I'm better than this. And I'll give you one example of mine. Because I met with a few companies that won't say any names, of course, and they said, we have given up on X population, period. And I was like, X population, period? And that's those moments where you feel like it's just defeated, that it's lonely on this journey, that it's hard to have people connect with the why and giving people opportunities, but unfortunately, for some reason, you know, that happened, right? And so that's what I recommend to you. When you have these lonely moments in your DEI journey, find something that you can get out of the world, escape, keep you motivated, keep you positive, because there will be really tough and dark times. So I'm gonna have two questions here that you can answer either or. One is, how would you recommend going about getting your executive team or manager to take your side to launch your DEI program? Especially, as I mentioned, if your manager might have a different view. And the other one is, can you explain how you grew your initiative and what roadblocks you have stumbled upon in growing your DEI initiative due to limited time? Feel free to answer either or maybe a combo of both.
I'll start with how to convince the people. Start with that. Understand your business case. And so if we were to rewind back to the conversation I was having about finding out what your engagement surveys are saying, right? What are employees' experiences in your organization? You could look at your EEOC complaints. That will tell you how the company is potentially exposing itself to risk and cost. You can look at your turnover rates, and your turnover rates will tell you what it's costing your business not to engage your employees or not to have value and respect for them. And so when you're approaching your leaders, you have to know their language and what they care about and speak in that language. And so businesses, it is a business, are concerned about business results and what impacts that. And so when you look at turnover and costs for retention and things like that, you can make a difference in that area when you focus on DEI. You can keep employees engaged. When you look at those engagement surveys, you can plug some of those holes in the bucket or mitigate some of those issues. When you can find out what the EEOC complaints are about, you can then have some interventions and training and or removing of leadership and people that don't align with your values. You can free them to go be elsewhere because they're not serving your employees or your organization well. And so I would say it's nice to be able to lean into the heart reasons, but you also need to speak to the mind and the pocketbook of people. And that will also help you with getting that buy-in. And once you get it at the top, it can be very easy with their support and guidance and giving them insights to then figure out how do we trickle it back down. And you can't let your leaders let it go. Like you don't then take it and then now you're back in HR and they go back in the suite. Like you have to engage them ongoing and have them present and have their voice amplifying the things that you care about, the things that you're saying. That's where people look when they're looking for, do you mean what you're saying? Or are you being performative? Are you just saying the golden buzzwords right now? They're looking for leaders to make the difference. They're looking at the actions and do they last? And so that would be my recommendation for engaging that top level.
Love it. Shelby or Annalie?
I'll build on one aspect of what you said, which is a lot of times we think of it as it's a statement or it's a DI statement on the web. I would say that what I have come to truly believe is that those statements have to be really connected to the overall deep, profound values of the organization and the policies that you are establishing it and then how well you're looking at them. There's one tool that I would offer is if you Google it, it's a racial equity impact assessment tool, or we call it RIA, racial equity impact assessment tool. And you can use it to kind of build off of what Angela was saying about really diagnosing in your system. And I love the kind of tangible things you're offering, because I think what I've seen is that if you're not exercising careful attention to these, whether it's the surveys, whether it's really actually speaking with people and engaging in real affinity groups or human resource groups that are bringing people together, stakeholder engagements, really think about the impact of what's happening in the organization, it's not going to really then address the core issues. But I would say before you even get there, you have to say, do we have agreement? Do we have understanding about the values of who we are as an organization? And are those reflected in what our ethos are? And so I would say that then convincing or working within your organization and building out a sense of connection to what you're doing, you gotta look at where the money is. Is your organization funding what you want to be your values around equity to the right degree? Or all your initiatives going, and are you then measuring, are you really thinking about whether those activities are then yielding the results you want? That's how we think about it in our district, is like, are the programs that we're putting in, are they then supporting our values? And are we getting the outcomes? Because if we're not, why do we do it every single year? And that led us to actually change some structural things in our organization where, let's say we were investing in a type of intervention program to support students. Year after year, the adults love it. I learned this program and this is working really well, but are we seeing outcomes for kids? Are we actually seeing our students do well and do better in school and experiencing excellence? If they're not, we have to be ready to let go of it. And that's really hard in schools, believe it or not. It's really hard when you get really comfortable with a way of doing something.
I'm going to piggyback on the business case because it's just since Matt calls me the talent acquisition expert. So, we always have to make a business case for the work that we do. And so we talk to these institutions and, like, what is the problem? And it's like, well, we have all these jobs and we don't have anybody to fill those jobs. And I'm just like, okay, unemployment rate on the west side of Chicago, 25 to 50%, it depends on the survey that you listen to. And people live in like walking distance and you're saying you can't find the talent. And it's not that they can't find the talent, it's like was mentioned earlier, a lot of times it's like the way you word your job postings, you put in a college degree is required, but it's not really necessary. One of the things we found in supply chain, as we were talking, it's like, most of the people who take in this job without a college degree perform better than those with a college degree. And it's like, you just figuring that out, right? I mean, you mentioned that now, but it's like you knew that. Oh yeah, we knew that, but you did nothing about it. And so a lot of times it just takes an outside perspective to come in too and help make that business case. Okay, what if we then work together to train those individuals and then bring them into the organization? And, and we support them because now you have you don't have to do the recruiting. One of the things we discovered too is that these institutions do not want to pay for recruiting. So it's fortunate we have a funder that's doing that. But part of it is the organization itself has to make an investment in talent acquisition. And so what we also ask people to do is, think outside the box. I tell people nobody hires my firm for simple problems. It's a problem that you tried every way to resolve it and it didn't work. Then you come to us and we'll resolve it for you. But the resolution costs money, right? And so a lot of times organizations aren't willing to make that investment into like, we really need to do this and we need to bring some outside professionals in. And that's really what with Rush, we have 2 programs going on with them. One, we actually pay them, we'll pay for the program, and the other program, they actually pay us. So it kind of works both ways in terms of what their initiatives are and what their goals are. And so for supply chain localization, they pay us. But for then talent acquisition, we actually do all the work for them and bring the talent to them. Another thing we did, I think is really important, is to get people to understand who they're working with and how they're working with, how they can work with them. And so Rush staff comes into our facility and they do the training, the hard skills training. But we also do job shadowing. So before people get hired, they get a chance to go in and work with individuals, work with the departments that they will be working with, get to know the people. And so when it's time to apply for that job, everybody knows them. And it makes that process a lot easier, but it also creates a sense of comfort between both the employer and the potential employee. So my just coming from the world of research, it's always like research, and then try to change things and don't keep repeating and trying to reinvent things that aren't working. But look to ways that can add value to the organization, that things that haven't been tried, and convince those in the C-level that it's worth the investment, because with the right program, the investments will pay off.
Awesome. So we have one last question, and we'll open up to the audience, online as well as in person. What's next for you and or your organization as it relates to DEI?
Well, since I have a mic, I'll just go ahead and go first. Well, for our organization, we are trying to work with every corporation and institution in the Chicagoland area to figure out what their needs are in terms of talent acquisition, and to connect them with local talent. So one of the things that wanted to mention too is that a lot of times, so remote work is becoming very popular, and they'll say, well, most of the people that live on the South and West Side, they don't have the environment is not conducive to working from home. They don't have an extra room, maybe a couple extra people living in the house. And so it's like, well, we can't hire them because they don't have a conducive work environment. And so one of the things that we looked at and said, okay, what if we develop and build a conducive work environment? And it's like, you'll do that? Yeah, we'll do that. So we just actually signed a contract for a 40,000 square foot building on the South Side where we're gonna build out a conducive work environment and don't charge for it, right? And so some of it has to be work that is, on the foundational level, but also corporations, most major corporations, they have foundations, and these foundations should also look at these issues and helping resolve those issues through some of their corporate giving programs.
That's exciting, to increase access for employees. We're not even just talking about increased access for community, but how do we help people have better access to those opportunities? We need to replicate that. One of the things, I think I've said this throughout, has been a kind of a underlying current in what I've been saying, is providing people with the resources, the capacity to have competency to do the work. And so what's been on our horizon is we recently made a huge investment in diversity training and resources on various levels that everyone in our organization can have access to. We have almost bi-weekly at this point live webinars within our organization that our leaders can log into and take, so that they're having conversations and they're opening the door to talk about sensitive things and work through our organization's challenges. DEI doesn't just belong in HR and talent acquisition. It's not a one-person job. And some organizations don't even have one person dedicated to it. It's like a shared job, or, they kind of shuffle it off to an HR professional to do. And so because of that, we wanted to make sure that everyone had that capacity. And so for us, it was a huge investment in making sure that people had access to be able to do it in their role, right? So marketing, have access to inclusive language guides so that they're using the right language when they're talking to our members and they're marketing our products, and making sure, for example, our requisition team and our that they know how to engage their hiring teams and candidates in ways that are open and inclusive, and then also expanding your own professional network. We're huge on referrals. A lot of organizations are, right? Like if you have an opening, we ask our employees to refer someone they know. If you are passionate about DEI, you don't have somebody designated to do it, or they're only the one person, an easy win is just to ask people to expand their networks beyond where they are today. And so there are diversity professional organizations for just about everything under the sun. Encourage your leaders and your people and your managers to join those things so that they can then be a pseudo recruiter in a sense, but they're exposing that organization in those spaces and tapping into talent that will resonate and give you that added perspective. And so those are some of those things that we've invested in this year, engaging in diversity professional organizations and making sure that people have capacity.
So I'm thinking through the lens as stepping into a new role. And so for me, what's next is really engaging in a listening posture that really speaks to what you were just sharing, which is what's the sense of inclusion? How do individuals feel in that organization? One of the things that came up in the interview process is when I was going through this, which was fascinating, was just how committed are you to really holding the organization and ourselves accountable to what it means to be a DEI leader and to be in an environment that's inclusive? A lot of times we're not willing to be courageous, and we push our level of accountability down the road because it's not ready or it's not organized. But yet there are those of us in the organization who are feeling it. We're feeling it. That accountability is there for us because we're not comfortable, as you said, and we're being told things like, well, you can't sit together, right? And so I think where is that organization at? And really understanding that, maintaining a humble posture, but at the same time, being bold and courageous. And so for me, that's what I'm excited about, especially going into an organization that has those values, that does want to see that happen. And so what's the gap? What's the gap, understanding the gap, and then building small steps to get there.
And that was our panel. But also, we'll take more pauses in a little bit too. Any questions from the audience? We have a few online, but anyone here in the audience? Yes. I can repeat your question.
I'm Carol Gauss. I'm a retired medical laboratory scientist. And one job seeker I'm not seeing on that list is older workers. I had to leave my position of 30 years as I closed my department, and I found it very difficult to find work in my line of work. And I have, over 50 years of knowledge in human physiology, and no one wanted to take advantage of that. And so I did end up working a couple of years in very sweatshop type experiences. An older worker might need some extra help, just as a homeless candidate might need food and clothing. Older workers might not be able to do the overtime, might not be able to switch shifts. And that's why I felt I was forced into retirement. After I retired, I tried to get into retail, libraries, and just minimum wage jobs, part-time. And I was told I did not have the relative experience. And I will see the same jobs in the paper, online, signs up in their organization, still looking for that same part-time position. So how do we get older workers included?
And first, I'll answer a little bit of that. Thank you for bringing that up. That's about 3 or 4 years old, and
Okay.
we weren't able to serve that population of older workers just yet. We recently have been awarded a contract to do so, so we'll definitely update that.
Okay.
So
Nice.
my apologies. But thank you for letting me know that. I would have not even thought of that, but thank you so much. Does anyone want to answer?
I'll speak to that. I think that's really an exciting part of the work for me and our organization, where we've created this pipeline that does invest in individuals we have a part of our program through Bloomboard. It's a partnership that invests in individuals who are paraprofessionals. So these are individuals who by and large have associates. I'm so proud we have individuals who've been paraprofessionals making really not the highest of the salaries, making career changes to become teachers. But that's only possible through this investment and saying, we believe in you and we're going to create a doorway for you to now, even though you are maybe 5 years from retirement, to now go into a career change and then have an opportunity to have higher wages as a teacher and give them the skills to become a better teacher. And that's been really powerful to observe, to see these individuals who may have thought, my retirement is coming and then I have to go get another job after I retired, but then still living at a minimum wage. Now they're able to go to another level of financial wealth that they may have been excluded from.
And I can add to that. So first is we'll chat after this event too. What's happening now is data is coming out about that need. Workers trying to find their next job after a retirement or work or whatever it might be. And what we're seeing is that it's a lonely journey to go on job boards, to have all these interviews. It's kind of hard to figure out where to go, what to do. So luckily AARP and a bunch of other nonprofit programs have been launching career navigation services. We actually have a career navigator right here, that we can definitely talk. So that has been luckily now, I'd say, validated that like foundations and nonprofits are here to help too. So we'll definitely talk.
Can I say one thing too? Thank you. And also just working in the space, one thing that I've seen is that there is a shift to talent that is more experienced. One of the things that I'm discovering is that young people don't want to work. And I think companies are actually seeing that a lot too. And so my suggestion too would just to think about a lot of the careers that are, or positions that are like highly in demand. And that's what we look at as we work with trying to place our individuals. We don't work with companies that I have 1 or 2 positions available, but it's like I have 10, 15 positions that are in demand and we can't fill those. And so, to me, it's more about the approach of, just looking at it from like my economist hat, and where there is a lot of demand with very little supply, it's probably a lot easier to break into that as opposed to, just looking at places where they can easily find talent. But like you said, a lot of times they don't even fill the jobs. The other thing, just putting my business hat on, I always say we all have talents that we can sell something to somebody, and sell that talent. So just being a medical laboratory scientist, I know there's a lot of talent there that somebody's looking for that you could sell.
And I should say, after the pandemic, they're all calling me. And I say, you had your chance.
What's your price?
Well, I have found meaningful work as a volunteer. Okay, and it hasn't been the financial disaster I thought it was going to be. But I know some older workers, that's not the case.
Thanks for the question. Anyone else have a question in the audience before we go online? All right, we have one online here. For someone that wants to enter and work in the DEI space, how do you recommend they go about doing this?
Start. Okay, so that was easy, right? So easier said than done. Just start somewhere. I think in this space, you have to have at least passion for it. You mentioned how hard it is, how lonely it could be. It's not going to be an easy win because systems take time to change and evolve. People take time to change and evolve. And so you at least got to start internally with the passion and the interest to do so. To ask the question means that you got a little bit of that anyway, right? But then I would say, go get a certification. There are certified diversity professional certifications out there. You don't need to restart a whole bachelor's degree or associate's or anything. My background is actually in clinical psychology, and I shifted careers 8 years ago. And so for me, I was able to take my skill set, not necessarily my title, and elevate my work experience to create a channel and pathway. I found that the certificates help to give you that knowledge base to have some conversations, learn to make that business case, go in spaces courageously and educated. And then I will say also join professional networks. So there are diversity networks, literally of professionals doing this work, and we share everything, okay? And then it's the space to cry. I think you said that you wanted to cry a little bit. I've got a few spaces that are safe enough to do so, because it's hard to be in that work and then also feel so challenged. I'm gonna speak to me. I don't want people to see me sweat or cry. I want to feel empowered in those spaces, and I'm doing it for my colleagues and my coworkers. So if I look weak and I look like I'm breaking down and things can't be changed, then I don't want them to lose hope. And so finding those networks will support you as you run into some of those challenges and give you solutions because it's such a sharing network of professionals. And so those are my two go-to.
So I think one of the things that you mentioned is just start, as you said that. That's one. The other thing that I'll say we learned is that it can be very burdensome for individuals who are the sole DI individual or director in that building, right? So that in our district, we'd had I think 2 or 3 essentially DI directors or coordinators 3 years in a row or over a 3-4 year period. And so over the last year, we switched to DE, diversity, inclusion, belonging group. So really essentially move from a individual model to a group of individuals from various departments who essentially develop the skills to be DI coordinators. So now the responsibility wasn't on one person, the responsibility was on multiple. So my recommendation, having seen this in our organization over time, is really build a coalition. Who else in your organization is interested? Get 2 or 3 people, go through that certificate course together. And if you're within one organization, start to build an approach that I think is focused on cross-departmental collaboration around those values versus you as the individual sole person, because that responsibility can become very tiring, especially if you're personal.
And this concludes our panel, but there's one last thing. As I mentioned, it's full of ups and downs and DEI tech work. And as I told you, Corey has been my moment where I can escape and feel inspired. So we'll have one last performance by Corey to end the night.
Man, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank everybody on the panelists and everybody that came to support. I'd like to dedicate this piece to a few friends of mine that were from my community: Jason Gatz, Echo Fresh, Parker Lee. I'm the light in the darkness. On the grind where the sparks is was a smart kid with an open heart that'll rip you apart like I'm heartless, like a marksman. If you start shit, best believe me, I'll finish. Back in the days, I was bone crushing, popping ass for my spinach. But nowadays, I'm a CEO, building franchises, seeing major growth. And my dough rising like a tidal wave. My company, what the title say, and that's no stunt. Evil Knievel, leave a legacy for all of my people. You transparent haters I see through. Lesson learned, I see no evil. I'm the Grim Reaper, I see no equals. And that is just not an expression. I am impressive, only focused on solutions whenever that I have a question. I am the problem, I am the answer. I only aim for the stars when I'm shooting. I was out painting up murals that thank our black teachers while everyone else was out looting. No cap, new era with no snaps, custom fitted, committed to balling. I'm stepping tall, digital underground, no Humpty Dump, never slipping, no falling. No, best city in the Midwest, yes, is where I reside. I'm from the Chi, city of pimps do or die in the X. We represent worldwide.
So the last thing I'll leave with you is it's ups and downs in this type of work. Every day, every week, every month, every year, I cry, you might cry. Find something, whether it's Corey or someone in your world, or something to do to keep yourself happy and going through. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.